Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're building this mid-century modern home in Paralives. So this is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home for a cultured art lover type of personality who in my mind works as a prestigious editor or a best-selling author or something like that. I actually finished this build about a week ago, but I just didn't have time to do this voiceover, and I'm literally about to leave on an out-of-town trip, so I'm trying to finish this video as soon as possible. So yeah, wish me luck. Hopefully this voiceover goes well. But yeah, really excited to be doing this mid-century modern inspired build because this style is a really interesting style, and as you guys know, I do love architectural history. So yeah, really excited to be covering this style in Paralives. So mid-century modern is a post-war artistic movement which lasted from around the late 1940s to the 1960s. This time period coincided with the development of suburbs and people living a more car-centric lifestyle. The homes during this period became more informal and featured open, sprawling layouts. The mid-century style actually traces its roots to the earlier modernist styles that first emerged during the first decades of the 20th century, such as the Bauhaus movement. Unfortunately, World War II happened, which somewhat made those earlier styles short-lived, but it did lead to technological advancements that would eventually result in the mid-century modern style that we all know and love. What I personally found so interesting is the fact that mid-century modern is still heavily present in contemporary furniture and architecture design. I guess mid-century modern carries with it a bit of that suburban fantasy, but in a stylish, laid-back kind of way. And yeah, I think that's what I was mainly going for in this build. I did try to base this off of floor plans I found online, but that didn't work out, so I just came up with my own version. With mid-century modern, I do prefer the more minimalistic style, kind of like the Palm Springs aesthetic, but mixed in with a more earthy Scandinavian style with the deep toned woods and also incorporating some natural stone textures and vibrant pops of color. That's a style that I feel like has that timeless elegance to it, because technically mid-century modern comes in a variety of different styles like retrofuturism with its gravity-defying designs, and even brutalism, which is somewhat experiencing a modern resurgence. But yeah, I've covered those styles before back in The Sims 4 days, but I think this retro Scandinavian minimalist style is my favorite. So yeah, overall I'm really happy with the end result. Definitely my favorite build so far, even though I've only done like 5 builds in this game. So yeah. For the exterior, I did go for a flat roof. I would have loved to incorporate some clear story windows, but unfortunately you can't put windows through roofs quite yet. I know they're implementing that at some point. And the lowest wall you can have is like 1 meter, which is way too tall for what I was going for, which was to mainly have this horizontal emphasis on the exterior. I might try experimenting with half walls though and see how that works out. I would also like to do a proper atomic style home with more ornate roofing in the future once I implement the ability to do that. But this house does have a sprawling garden, and I wanted to bring some of that into the interior. That's why I incorporated some floor-to-ceiling windows and sliding glass doors. And I also used ribbon windows all throughout for areas that needed a little bit more privacy. So at this point, I wasn't quite satisfied with how the exterior of the house was turning out, so I ended up adding a couple of extra details to it, like this decorative screen, which is a feature that we see a lot of in mid-century modern architecture. And I also modified the roofline of the front of the house because I felt like it was looking too flat. So yeah, I also added this carport to the exterior, which wasn't there originally. And I do feel like it added to the aesthetic, even though at the moment it's just a non-functional aspect of the house because we don't really have functional cars. But yeah, overall, I was really satisfied with how the exterior of the house was coming together. Initially, I did go for more of that Palm Springs aesthetic with having mostly white exteriors, but I ended up adding some wood paneling to the exterior just to bring it down a little bit and add some of that natural aspect. So I think at this point the style of the house did change from something that's a little bit more Palm Springs to something that's more LA in my opinion. So yeah, overall I'm really happy with how the exterior turned out. It actually took me way too long to figure it out and to have something that I was happy with. And yeah, a lot of that footage just got edited out. Yeah, believe it or not, it took me so long to actually build this because that's a thing with these kinds of modern minimalist homes. It looks very simple, but executing them and making them look good does take time. Like, I was never really satisfied with whatever I was doing. And yeah, I just kept experimenting with like different techniques and stuff. I am still learning how to like build in this game, and I did watch a lot of videos of people just building in this game and trying to see like what techniques work with other people's designs, and also what translates well in game with how, you know, the lighting works and stuff like that. I didn't use any mods for this build actually, but now that I mention it, I did use a lighting mod to take the screenshots just because I wanted to have that dramatic lighting. So yes. And also for the exterior, I did use the floor tool, subdivide tool, to make the pathways leading up from the garage area and also to the main entrance, just because I wanted to use the floor textures that currently aren't really available as terrain paint. So there is actually a small gap between the road and the pathways leading up to the house itself. I did try to fix it. I know you can. I know that with a recent update, they made it so that the terrain tools have this little area of effect outside your house. So yeah, I tried doing some terrain manipulation to make sure there wasn't a gap between the pathways leading up to the house and the road. I know that with this game, you can also change the lot boundaries, but I didn't want to do that because I wanted you guys to be able to download this house and add it into your game. And I feel like if you edit the lot boundaries, it's possible to plop a lot in, because I tried it out, but it does make the whole process a lot more complicated. So for this particular build, I was fine with sticking with this lot that I chose, even though for me it was like way too big for what I was going for. But I have seen people play around with like the lot boundaries and stuff, and I'm probably gonna play around with that eventually in the future as well. For those of you guys who want to download this, I'll probably upload it on the Steam Workshop once I get back from my travels. I just don't really have the luxury of time to log into the game right now and to, you know, export all of my builds and share them on the Steam Workshop. But yeah, right now we're actually working on the pool area, and this is another one of the features of this house that was also a bit complicated, not because it's hard to do necessarily, but because we don't have a proper pool feature in this game. So we ended up just digging a hole in the ground using the terrain tools, and actually I think the right word for it is like an excavation, and I tried to make it look like a swimming pool by painting it with this blue tiles and also adding a sunken down window to simulate kind of like the water, I guess. But yeah, there's like no ladder into this pool or anything like that. But yeah, it took me a couple of tries actually to get the pool to look right, and I think we got there eventually. I do feel like with this house in particular, we did need that pool because it just felt incomplete without like a proper pool area. Moving on to the interior, I did go for a more open concept layout because I do imagine the person living here to be really into entertaining. And there's also this aspect of modularity, so they can, you know, open up the porch at the back, for example, if they want to accommodate more guests. I don't know if there's necessarily gameplay for that in Paralives quite yet, but I do love that kind of lifestyle. And I was really happy with how the interior turned out, especially because it's an original layout that I came up with, because I did try a couple of other interior layouts from actual mid-century floor plans that I found online. Unfortunately, they don't really translate that well in game, so I did just decide to come up with my own, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. And yeah, the main inspiration for the whole layout was actually the kitchen, because I remember seeing Ricky Martin's house on Architectural Digest a while back, and I really love how kind of like free flowing the kitchen was in his house, and I wanted to recreate that in this build as well. I'm not sure if his house is necessarily mid-century, but the kitchen itself was giving mid-century vibes, even though I did notice looking at a lot of mid-century floor plans that the kitchen tends to be very small and enclosed, and not really like the kitchen that we have here, which is kind of like a more open concept style kitchen that opens onto the dining room, and then it also opens into the back porch kind of area, which in my mind is kind of like the extension into the dining room. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, seeing just how, small the kitchens, I'm not sure if they're necessarily small, but how enclosed they were in like actual like mid-century era floor plans. But for the main living room itself, I was really happy with how this section of the house turned out. I was initially going for this statement fireplace, but we don't have the ability to make these kind of like gravity defying fireplaces quite yet in Paralives. There might be a way if I used a column and if I painted it with like a stone texture, because I didn't realize it as I was doing this, but apparently you can actually use the eyedropper tool and apply wallpaper textures on any item, which is actually such an amazing feature of this game. I wish I knew about it sooner, but I'm definitely going to be trying that out in future builds actually. But now that I think about it, I probably could have done that and made a column into kind of like a stone texture to match the walls, and that probably could have been like a gravity defying fireplace. I don't know why, I just love repeating that word. Maybe it's because I just recently watched the second Wicked movie. I know I'm a bit late to the party, but I actually bought the Blu-ray for that one and I watched it with my parents, and I didn't know that there was gonna be I actually watched it with my best friend first, and then I knew that my parents were going to be staying over. So I was like, okay, let's watch the Wicked movie, the second Wicked movie. But I remember watching it with my best friend, and I didn't know that there was going to be like this sexy time. So I was like really laughing because I just was caught off guard, you guys, that there was like this whole section to the movie. It's probably not meant to be like a comedic scene or anything, because it's followed by, a very serious scene. But honestly, like as I was watching it with my friend, I was laughing just because I did not know that there was going to be a moment like that in the movie. But yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about the Wicked movie. I'm definitely shooketh by the second one, especially the ending. I did not know that that was the story of Wicked, like, to be completely honest with you guys. I know I'm getting sidetracked here, but I did not know that that was the Wicked story, because I've only known about Wicked because of Glee. So I know the songs like Defying Gravity and For Good. I did not know what the story was. And I remember watching the first Wicked movie, and I didn't even realize at the time that they had this storyline about the animals and stuff like that. So yeah, some of you guys who are more knowledgeable about Wicked might probably want to enlighten me on that. I do prefer hearing it from you guys than looking this up online, because I just love getting recommendations from like word of mouth. I feel like that's worth way more than whatever IMDb or like Watch Mojo will tell me. But yeah, for the main living room, actually, we do have like this central fireplace area. Once again, I would have loved to have had like a gravity defying fireplace, but I don't know, I might try that out in a future build. So I also used white shelves, just plain white shelves on the living area. And those shelves actually remind me of like my IKEA shelves that I have in my bedroom right here. And I just put a bunch of like decorative items on there, and I was really happy with how that turned out. I love incorporating, you know, artistic flourishes here and there with, you know, some strong accent colors or like bold patterns. I really like that effect. And yeah, we also have a statement rug in the living room as well, which I really loved, and a white sofa, which is like my absolute dream to have. If eventually I do get a place of my own, I would love to have like a white sofa, even though I think it's probably not the most practical thing to have, but it just looks so good. It looks so aesthetic. And yeah, really happy with how the living area came together. It does have these exposed beams, which is very mid-century in my opinion. And one thing that I actually forgot to mention in this house is that it does have low ceilings, which gives it kind of like that intimacy kind of vibes, which I really liked. And for the kitchen itself, like I said, it does have that flow to it where it kind of like opens into the dining room, and the dining room itself kind of just opens into like the porch area out back overlooking the pool. And I do like to consider it as like an extension of the dining room. And I like to think that on a good day, maybe they will add some seating out there and make it into like an actual extension of the dining room, or maybe they can move the dining table on there. So yeah, really happy with how the kitchen turned out. The layout was inspired by Ricky Martin's house, as I mentioned earlier, but the kitchen itself, like the colors that I chose and the style of the counters, were actually inspired by Ilya's house from Heated Rivalry. As you guys know, I have been obsessed with Heated Rivalry, and there are rumors that there's gonna be like a 2-hour special or something like that. I do know that they're starting to film season 2, but that one isn't scheduled to come out until like April of 2027. And yeah, the wait is painful, but I'm sure it'll be worth it. But yeah, the colors and the style of the kitchen is just mainly inspired by Elias house, which I really love. I also love the mismatching counters as well. I will say that the kitchen does feel a bit more contemporary, but I'm really happy that it kind of balances it all out. You know, I wasn't planning on making this like a fully historical, like mid-century home. There's mostly mid-century, but there's also like a mix of modern and contemporary stuff in here as well. And moving on to the master bedroom, I did struggle with this room quite a bit because I wasn't quite sure what the layout was going to be. And I also messed around with where the window placements were. And I'm really happy with the end result, even though it took me like 2 or 3 tries to get it all to come together. And really the main focal point of the bedroom is the bed, of course, which is like fully mid-century. And I gotta say, it's so gorgeous. And it's kind of like in the middle of the room as well. And I love incorporating these in my builds, but I just used these kitchen cabinets as like fake closets, I guess, because they just look so minimalist. And I feel like we didn't really need a lot of statement pieces, because I feel like if you have too many, they kind of start to cancel out each other. So I just put this little console table, and I actually put like a record player on top of it. And I don't have that much experience with the record player, so you guys might need to advise me on this. But do record players need speakers? Because I'm seeing these in a lot of people's designs, even in like a lot of Instagram pages and social media pages that post interiors and stuff like that. And I often see them without any speakers. Now, from my limited knowledge of these record players, I always thought that you needed speakers in order for them to work properly. I might be wrong. Maybe they come with their own speakers. I know like the suitcase ones that people don't really recommend if you're like getting into the hobby. Like the suitcase one apparently ruin your records, your vinyl records. So a lot of people don't really recommend them, like the really cheap suitcase looking ones. I actually almost got one of those, and then I did my due diligence and actually researched about the hobby, and then I realized that it actually costs like hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars to get a good quality record player. And I think that put me off into collecting vinyls because I don't really need another expensive hobby. I already have too many. And yeah, I think ultimately that was a good decision in the end because I don't think I can commit to collecting vinyls, you guys, but I really appreciate it. And I also put like a computer desk area across the bed. I did try to keep it minimal because I'm a firm believer in less is more, and I didn't really want this house to feel too overly cluttered. But I was really happy with how the master bedroom came together. I didn't film the furnishing process for the other bedroom, but I will include it in the screenshots. And yeah, the master bedroom does have an ensuite, and I did include footage of that. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I just really enjoyed furnishing this bathroom. I think it came together really nicely, and I figured out some ways to actually make the bathrooms look a bit more intimate and classy. So I just put together this little tray of random stuff on the sink area. I feel like the double sink just feels very luxury to me for some reason, so I wanted to incorporate that into this build as well. But yeah, really happy with how the bathroom turned out. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be repeating this technique of like how I cluttered kind of like the sink area because I think it looks really cool. And I've also been loving that orchid plant that I also used in the dining room. I think it looks really beautiful. And for the master bathroom, I did include like some wood accents to it as well. I will split that mirror because I know that that's supposed to be like a mirror that opens up into like some shelving or maybe into like a medicine cabinet. Basically, I ended up putting two mirrors there, so it feels more functional like that. And finally, we have reached the landscaping part of this video. I am so happy, you guys, because I had so much fun doing the landscaping for this, even though I was low-key losing my mind because I didn't know how to landscape this huge lot, or at least it's huge for what I was going for. And I wanted this to be more intimate, but the lot itself was just so huge. So I actually kind of like split the landscaping into different sections. So there's this pool area and then there's this wooded area as well. But I did discover that you can use the advanced placement tool or advanced placement feature, and you can resize or rescale the items like I did with the trees right there. And it gives you like this variety of trees that you don't really get when you're just sizing down the trees with like the usual feature. It does give a little bit more variety, and you also have the option to recolor trees in this game, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I really love the amount of customizability that we have in this game. And I also incorporated a little fireplace section outside as well, overlooking the view of the town, and I just thought that that was really cozy. And yeah, unfortunately, I did have to cut out a lot of the landscaping for this video because it just took me forever to finish, but I did incorporate this little makeshift, I want to call it like a modernist mailbox, and I just thought that was really cool. They also added this like lot numbering in the recent update, which I thought was pretty cool as well. But yeah, I'm not sure if mailboxes in this game are functional actually, but I wish we got like some more modern looking ones because I feel like the only mailbox that we have is like way too traditional looking. But yeah, you guys can see what I did with the landscaping here, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And I think that is actually going to be it for this build. So special shout out to those of you who made it this far. Thank you so much for sticking all the way through the end. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. You all have an awesome day. And I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.